You can't handle the physical setup. The event coordinator's voice was apologetic but firm as she approached Danny Morrison in the Gary Sinise Foundation warehouse, where he was organizing donated wheelchairs for wounded veterans. Danny looked up from the wheelchair he was inspecting. He was 36 years old, wearing a navy blue GSF volunteer t-shirt, and standing on two prosthetic legs, C-legs, computerized carbon fiber, $100,000 worth of technology replacing the legs he'd lost in Ramadi, Iraq, 17 years ago. His left arm, also prosthetic, myoelectric, controlled by muscle signals, held a clipboard with inventory notes. "Ma'am, I can handle it," Danny said quietly. "I've been volunteering here for 2 years. I know the setup." Jennifer Chun, the event coordinator, was 42, well-meaning, stressed about managing the foundation's biggest fundraiser of the year. She glanced at Danny's prosthetics, both legs visible below his cargo shorts, the mechanical joints and carbon fiber obvious. The prosthetic arm with its articulated fingers holding the pen. "I understand you want to help," she said carefully. "But tonight's gala is our biggest event. 500 guests, major donors, celebrities. Gary Sinise will be speaking. The setup is physically demanding, moving tables, chairs, staging equipment. With your situation, I think it's better if you attend as a guest. Let the able-bodied volunteers handle the work." Danny's jaw tightened. He'd heard this before. At job interviews after Walter Reed. At the gym when he tried to lift weights. At Home Depot when he wanted to buy lumber to build a deck. People saw the prosthetics and assumed incapable. "I am able-bodied," he said evenly. "These prosthetics cost more than most people's cars. I can lift 50 pounds per arm. I can walk, run, climb stairs. I've been doing this volunteer work for 2 years without incident." Jennifer smiled. That patronizing smile Danny hated more than outright rejection. "I'm sure you're very capable. But we have insurance concerns. Liability. What if you fall carrying something? What if a prosthetic malfunctions? This is a high-profile event with major media coverage. We can't risk." "Risk what? A disabled veteran helping at an event honoring disabled veterans?" Jennifer's face flushed. "That's not what I meant. Danny, please. Just attend as a guest tonight. You've earned it. Relax. Enjoy the gala." Across the warehouse, about 30 feet away, Gary Sinise had just arrived for a pre-event walkthrough. He was 69 years old, wearing faded jeans, a black GSF baseball cap, and the casual authority of someone who'd spent 30 years serving veterans. He was talking with his event director about the evening's program when he overheard the exchange. Gary stopped mid-sentence, turned, watched. He saw the volunteer, prosthetic legs, prosthetic arm, purple heart pin on his GSF shirt, being told he couldn't help set up an event honoring wounded warriors. The irony was so absurd it almost made Gary laugh. Almost. Instead, he walked over. "Excuse me," Gary said, his voice friendly but carrying the tone that made people pay attention. "What's the problem here?" Jennifer turned, surprised. "Mr. Sinise. No problem at all. I was just explaining to Danny that tonight's setup might be too physically demanding." "Too demanding for who?" Gary interrupted, looking at Danny. Really looking. At the prosthetics. At the military bearings still visible despite missing 3 limbs, shoulders back, spine straight. The posture that never leaves soldiers even when their bodies change. At the scars visible on Danny's neck and right forearm. At the purple heart pin. Danny stood straighter, if that was possible. "Sir, I'm Danny Morrison. I volunteer here. I wanted to help with setup tonight, but Ms. Chun has concerns about my prosthetics." Gary studied Danny's face. His right eye didn't track quite right. Prosthetic, Gary realized. This wasn't just a double amputee. This was someone who'd lost everything in combat and rebuilt himself piece by piece. "Danny," Gary said slowly, "where did you serve?" "Iraq, sir. Ramadi, 2006 to 2007. 1st Battalion, 6th Infantry Regiment, 1st Armored Division." Gary went completely still. Every veteran advocate knew what Ramadi 2007 meant. That was the height of the surge, the deadliest period of the Iraq War. The year American soldiers died in numbers that made the news every single night. "Ramadi, 2007. Gary's voice was quiet. "That was a bad year." "Yes, sir. Very bad." "When did you get hit?" "March 15th, 2007. Route Michigan. VBID, vehicle-borne IED. Took out our lead Humvee. Killed 3 of my brothers." 7 wounded. I was. Danny gestured to his prosthetics. I was the most damaged one who lived. Gary looked at Jennifer. And you're telling him he can't help set up chairs? Jennifer looked stricken. Mr. Sinise, I was just concerned about insurance liability. Jennifer, this man survived an explosion that killed 3 soldiers and took 3 of his limbs. I think he can handle moving furniture. Gary's voice wasn't angry, just factual. Danny, I want you on setup tonight. Not as a volunteer in the back. With me. Okay. Danny's eyes, the one real eye, filled with tears. He immediately blinked back. Yes, sir. 2 hours later, event setup. Gary worked alongside Danny setting up the gala, and what he saw amazed him. Danny moved with precision. The prosthetic legs, sea legs with microprocessor-controlled knees, adapted to terrain automatically. He walked smoothly across the concrete warehouse floor, up the ramp to the stage, navigating obstacles without hesitation. The prosthetic arm, a $80,000 myoelectric device, could grip chairs, lift equipment, manipulate objects with surprising dexterity. But more than the technology, Gary saw the determination. When Danny picked up a 40-pound box of decorations, his prosthetic fingers gripped firmly while his real right hand steadied it. When he climbed stairs to adjust lighting, the prosthetic knees bent and extended fluidly. When another volunteer asked him to help move a table, Danny grabbed one end without hesitation. You do this a lot? Gary asked, watching Danny secure a banner. The volunteer work? Yeah. Once or twice a month, I drive down from Phoenix. Help organize donations, inventory, whatever needs doing. Phoenix, Gary repeated. Something clicked in his memory. Danny Morrison. Phoenix. Wait, are you the Danny Morrison who received a RISE home? Danny paused, surprised Gary knew. Yes, sir. 2015. You were there for the dedication, actually. We met briefly. Gary remembered now. Vaguely. He'd dedicated over 100 RISE homes, specially adapted smart homes for severely wounded veterans. He remembered a young triple amputee in Phoenix, barely 30 years old, getting keys to a fully accessible home with widened doorways, roll-in shower, adapted kitchen, voice-controlled everything. That was your home, Gary said slowly. We built that for you. Yes, sir. Changed my life. Before that home, I was living with my parents. Couldn't navigate their house in a wheelchair. Couldn't cook independently. Couldn't shower without help. That home gave me my independence back. Danny's voice was thick with emotion. I'd been trying to figure out how to thank you ever since. Volunteering was all I could think to do. Gary stared at him. You received one of our homes, and now you volunteer for us. Sir, your foundation gave me my life back. The least I can do is help other veterans get theirs. And Gary Sinise, who'd played Lieutenant Dan, who'd spent 30 years advocating for veterans, who'd seen thousands of wounded warriors, felt his throat tighten. Because this was it. This was the entire point. Not just building homes. Not just providing wheelchairs or prosthetics or mental health services. But restoring veterans to the point where they could serve again. Where they could give back. Where they could be whole. Danny, Gary said quietly, I need to tell your story tonight. At the gala. Will you let me? Danny hesitated. Sir, I'm not special. I'm just a volunteer. You're a triple amputee who received a home from us and now spends his free time helping other veterans receive the same help. That's not just anything. That's exactly what this foundation is about. 17 years earlier, Staff Sergeant Danny Morrison was a very different person. Route Michigan, Ramadi, Iraq. 0847 hours. The convoy was 5 vehicles strong, rolling through the most dangerous city in the most dangerous country in the world. Danny was 20 years old, gunner in the 3rd vehicle, scanning rooftops for snipers, watching the road for IEDs. Ramadi in 2007 was hell. Insurgents controlled entire neighborhoods. IEDs killed Americans daily. Firefights were constant. Danny's unit had already lost 4 soldiers that deployment. Everyone expected to die. The only question was when. The VBID came out of a side street, an orange and white taxi rigged with 500 pounds of explosives, driving straight at the convoy. The lead vehicle tried to evade. Too late. The explosion was massive. A fireball that rose 50 feet. The concussion wave that flipped vehicles. The heat that melted metal. Danny remembered the flash. The noise that deafened. The sensation of flying. His vehicle hit by the blast wave, rolling, tumbling. And then nothing. Blackness. He woke up 3 days later in Landstuhl, Germany. Couldn't feel his legs. Couldn't feel his left arm. Couldn't see out of his right eye. The doctors told him, both legs amputated above the knee, left arm amputated below the elbow, right eye destroyed, severe burns, traumatic brain injury, shrapnel throughout his body. 3 soldiers from his unit were dead. 7 were wounded. Danny was the most severely injured survivor. He spent 3 years in Walter Reed Army Medical Center. 47 surgeries. Learning to use prosthetic legs. Learning to use a prosthetic arm. Learning to live in a body that was more machine than man. Physical therapy. Psychological therapy. Suicide prevention counseling. Dark days when Danny wanted to die because living like this seemed impossible. And then, in 2015, the Gary Sinise Foundation built him a home. A place designed for his body. Where he could be independent. Where he could cook, shower, live without asking for help. Where he could be Danny again. Not just a patient. Not just a disabled veteran, but a man with a home and a future. That home saved Danny's life. Not medically. Psychologically. It gave him purpose. It gave him hope. And it made him want to help other veterans find the same. 500 guests filled the ballroom. Donors in suits and evening gowns. Celebrities. Military leadership. Gold Star families. Wounded warriors in wheelchairs and prosthetics. Media cameras. This was the Gary Sinise Foundation's biggest fundraiser of the year, raising millions for veteran programs. Gary stood at the podium, finishing his prepared remarks about the Foundation's RESE program. Then he went off script. Before we continue, Gary said, I want to tell you about someone I met today. His name is Danny Morrison. Danny, can you come up here? Danny, sitting in the audience in a borrowed suit jacket over his volunteer t-shirt, looked shocked. Gary gestured insistently. Slowly, Danny stood, the prosthetic legs whirring softly as the knees extended, and walked to the stage. 500 people watched a triple amputee walk to the podium. The room went silent. Gary put his arm around Danny's shoulders. This morning, Danny was told he couldn't help set up this event. Someone said he couldn't handle the physical work because of his prosthetics. Danny is a triple amputee, both legs, left arm, right eye, all lost in Iraq in 2007. The audience murmured. Gary continued. But here's what that person didn't know. Danny received a Gary Sinise Foundation RISE home in 2015. We built him a specially adapted smart home in Phoenix. Gave him independence. Changed his life. And for the past 2 years, Danny has been driving from Phoenix to Los Angeles once or twice a month to volunteer at our warehouse. Organizing donations. Helping other veterans. Giving back. Gary's voice broke slightly. Danny volunteers for the organization that saved his life. And this morning, someone told him he couldn't help because he might break. This man survived an explosion that killed 3 of his brothers. This man rebuilt himself with carbon fiber and microchips. This man drives 400 miles round trip to help other veterans. And someone thought he couldn't handle setting up chairs. The room erupted in applause. Danny was crying openly now, not bothering to hide it. I played Lieutenant Dan in Forrest Gump, Gary said. A character who lost his legs and had to find his way back to life. But Danny Morrison is the real thing. And tonight, I want to announce a new initiative, the Danny Morrison Veteran Volunteer Program. We're creating paid positions for veterans who want to work at the foundation, helping other veterans. Danny, you're hired. Full-time. Veteran Outreach Coordinator. If you'll take it. Danny couldn't speak. Just nodded. The ballroom gave him a standing ovation that lasted 3 minutes. 6 months later, Danny Morrison sat in his office at Gary Sinise Foundation headquarters, Los Angeles, overlooking the warehouse where he'd volunteered for 2 years. His desk nameplate read, Daniel Morrison, Veteran Outreach Coordinator. He was making $65,000 a year, more money than he'd ever made in his life. He had health insurance. He had purpose. He had a job helping other wounded warriors navigate the same journey he'd navigated, from broken to whole, from recipient to giver, from victim to hero. On his desk, next to his computer, Danny kept 2 photographs. The first, Ramadi, 2007. Danny in full combat gear, 20 years old, holding an M4 rifle, standing with his squad. 3 of those soldiers were dead. Danny was the only one visibly damaged. But they'd all paid prices invisible in photos. The second, Phoenix, 2015. Danny standing in front of his Gary Sinise Foundation RISE home. Using a walker, still learning his prosthetics, Gary Sinise beside him holding the keys. The moment, everything changed. And on his wall, Danny had framed the quote from Forrest Gump that Gary had made famous. "Lieutenant Dan got me invested in some kind of fruit company. So then I got a call from him, saying we don't have to worry about money no more. And I said, that's good. One less thing." Beneath it, Danny had written in marker, "Gary Sinise got me invested in helping veterans. So then I got a call from him, saying I had a job helping others. And I said, that's good. One less thing to worry about. One more reason to live." A young veteran came into Danny's office one afternoon. Marine corporal, bilateral leg amputee, fresh from Walter Reed, scared about the future. "I don't know what to do," the Marine said. "I can't work. I can't support myself. I feel like a burden." Danny stood up from his desk, walked around on his prosthetic legs, showed the Marine his prosthetic arm picking up a coffee cup, typing on a keyboard, functioning. "You see these?" Danny said, gesturing to his prosthetics. "These aren't limitations. They're tools. You lost your legs. I lost 3 limbs and an eye. But we're not broken. We're rebuilt. And rebuilt can be stronger than original if you let it." "How do you do it?" the Marine asked. "How do you stay positive?" Danny thought about Ramadi, about Walter Reed, about the dark days when suicide seemed easier than living, about the Gary Sinise Foundation home that gave him independence, about Gary refusing to let him be sidelined, about finding purpose in service again. "I do it," Danny said, "by remembering that I didn't survive for nothing. I survived to help the guys who come after me. The guys like you. You're not a burden. You're a Marine who gave everything for your country. And now your country, people like Gary Sinise, people like me, we're going to give back. We're going to help you rebuild. And someday, you're going to help the next guy. That's how we do it. We pay it forward." The Marine nodded slowly. "You really think I can work again?" "Brother, I'm a triple amputee with a brain injury working full-time at a foundation helping veterans. If I can do it, you can do it. You just need someone to believe in you." Danny paused. "I believe in you. Gary believes in you. And we're going to prove to you that you can believe in yourself." 2 years after Gary hired Danny, the Gary Sinise Foundation dedicated its 150th RISE home, a specially adapted smart home for a quadruple amputee Army Ranger in Colorado. Gary invited Danny to speak at the dedication. Standing in front of the new home, keys in hand, about to give them to a veteran who'd lost all 4 limbs, Danny told his story. "In 2015, Gary Sinise handed me keys to a home like this one. I was broken, angry, couldn't see a future. That home gave me independence. But more than that, it gave me hope. It showed me that people cared, that my service mattered, that I could still have a life worth living." Danny looked at the Ranger in his wheelchair. "Today, you're getting that same gift. This home will change your life. But I'm here to tell you something. Receiving this home isn't the end of your journey. It's the beginning. You're going to rebuild your life. You're going to find purpose again. And someday, when you're ready, you're going to help the next guy. Because that's what we do. We survive. We rebuild. We serve." The Ranger took the keys, started crying. Danny crouched down, prosthetic knees bending smoothly, and looked him in the eyes. "Welcome home, brother. Your new life starts now." Danny Morrison's story reminds us, the people we dismiss, the ones we think can't handle something, are often the strongest among us. The veteran with prosthetics might be the one who survives the unsurvivable. The volunteer might be the hero you saved who's now saving others. And the person you underestimate might be exactly who you need. Gary Sinise played Lieutenant Dan, but Danny Morrison lived it. Lost his legs, his arm, his eye, lost everything except his will to serve. And when someone told him he couldn't help, Gary Sinise saw what he really was. Not a disabled veteran, but a rebuilt warrior still fighting for his brothers. If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe to Empowering Stories to honor our veterans. Have you ever been underestimated because of a disability, only to prove them wrong? Share your story below. Remember, prosthetics aren't limitations. They're proof someone refused to quit. Honor our wounded warriors. See their strength, not their scars.